Come on in, welcome in, come on in. It's Royal Black and Elite time. I'm Lady Trinette Wilson. I am a lecturer and social historian, and I cannot wait to tell you about our story today. As always, we try to pick people that you may have never heard of, and I know many people have not heard of this lady right here, Mildred Blount. Now, if you love a good hat, and back in the day, hats were the theme, Mildred was one of the ladies who were making those hats. Now, listen, we're getting ready for our lecture and tour for the month of February for Black History Month. As I said, I'm Lady T. So let's get right into today's story. And as always, thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Now, back in the day, hat wearing was the thing. They used to have whole stores dedicated to nothing but hats. And rich and poor, everybody wore a hat. And if they weren't wearing a hat, they had a bonnet on. So a head covering was really important. And right in the middle of that was this lady right here, Mildred Blount. Now, we don't know a lot about her history. She was born in 1907 in North Carolina, and we know that she was orphaned at the age of 2. We also know that she had a sister named Clara who she opened up a dress and hat shop with. So that's the only family that we know of. But we see Mildred pop up again in New York when she was still a teenager as she began her career as a maker. But she truly began it as an errand girl. Mildred was still in high school. So she worked in the day and actually went to school at night. She worked at a place called Madame Claire's Dress and Hat Shop. And that's where she ran errands, but she also learned how to make hats. And her work was impeccable. Without any formal training or anything, she was able to make these hats. And at only 17 years old, she was commissioned to make the headpieces for the bridesmaids of Madam C.J. Walker's granddaughters, the bridesmaids for her wedding. Now, no one knows how she was able to do this, how she got up on this job, but she did. Now, Madam C.J. Walker was the first millionaire, was believed to be one of the first black female millionaires in the United States. So to get a job like this was something really special. Now, she wanted to get some formal training also in the thing about Mildred was she was a student of history and she really brought that into her designs. She went to this school, the Cooper Union Art School in New York. But you know what? She got ill and she wasn't able to finish. But it really didn't matter because her head skills were already impeccable. I mean, really off the chain. She was already taking private clients and she also taught milliner schools at the YWCA there in New York. So her name was growing, and in 1939, she was asked to make a collection of hats for the New York World's Fair. Now, merchants came from all around the world to this fair, and this was a fair that was supposedly to be looking into the future. So she put her head together, looked at her history, and she created a hat collection of 87 miniature hats that were styled from the 1680s to 1937. So I think that's why, she was just so different from everyone else because she had an eye, she knew history, and she brought it to her designs. And what you're seeing here are some of those hats that were on display. I mean, look at these hats. Many of these hats that you see on the screen here are still being worn today. I mean, it is just absolutely beautiful. And because her work was received so well, it gave her the courage that she needed to apply for one of the most distinguished hat companies in the country at the time called John Fredericks. It was and Mr. John, he hired her. And so in an article in 1946 in Ebony, she told the story about her being applying for the job and the fact that they were shocked that she applied for it because no one who was black had ever applied. Well, she got the job, worked there for 13 years, and became the lead hat maker for Fredericks. But what led her to that lead hat maker is Gone with the Wind. The wife of the producer of the show saw her work at the World's Fair and commissioned Fredericks to make the hats for Gone with the Wind. So look at these hats. Aren't these beautiful? Of course, now back in the day, she didn't get credit. for making these hats. But Fredericks, they said Mr. John would always say in private that it was her who made the hats. She even made Gloria Vanderbilt's bridesmaid headpieces. She wanted to make sure from now on she would get the credit that she needed. So she did apply for the Motion Picture Costumers Union, and she was finally accepted in 1955. But she worked for him for 13 years and, not really getting the credit that she deserved for all of the beautiful work that she did. So she opened up her own shop in Beverly Hills, and her clients was impressive. I mean, it was just incredible. Joan Crawford was one of them. Here's Judy Garland. She worked this hat. Is the hat that Judy Garland wore, and we still wear hats like that today. So I mean, her work was impeccable. Look at this, Marian Anderson, and she was a famous opera singer. So she also worked with Black people as well, which I'm really happy to see. Because sometime back in those days, they kind of kept it with just the rich people, so or the people who didn't look like them sometimes. So Vivian Lee, she worked with her. Ginger Rogers, the great dancer. So, I mean, she worked with all different kinds of people, and her career continued on throughout her entire life. She retired as a millionaire. And look at this in Ladies Journal. Her hat was featured here. The black and white, the red and white polka dot hat. One of those hats that she had featured at the World's Fair. After Mildred was inducted into the Motion Pictures Costumers Union, she was finally allowed to get the credit for her work, as I mentioned earlier. So this is one of the movies that she got the credit for in 1941 called Blackstreet. Mildred's career spanned 60 years. And what I love is that I don't have a story to say, oh, she went broke because she spent all her money or she didn't save all her money or anything like that. Now, we don't see that she had a husband or children, but she did work all of her life as a wealthy woman, and who catered to high society people and went to high society gatherings. So she was known all over New York City and California, because remember, she moved to California to open up the other hat shop for Fredericks. And then she opened up her own head shop there in California. And that's where she passed in 1974. They don't tell us what she passed of, but they have many monuments actually finally going up to Mildred, because a lot of people didn't even know who she was. Some of her hats and headpieces are on display at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art and at the California African American Museum. So if you're ever in that area and you want to go pay some respect to Miss Mildred Blount, definitely go out there and check her out. Well, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I found Miss Blount to be so very interesting and her work to be outstanding. As always, I'm Lady Trinette Wilson, and I can't thank you enough for joining me. I mentioned earlier, I'm getting ready for my Royal Black and Elite lecture and exhibit tour, and I am so excited. I can't wait to see you out on the road. But listen, if you have an organization or church and you haven't planned for Black History Month, give me a call or email me or hit me up in my messages here on YouTube. We can talk about what your interests are and what your needs are for your organization, and I'd be happy to do it. And we do it online on Zoom. You can see the exhibit and everything. So definitely reach out. Well, I thank you for joining me for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I appreciate you all for watching and commenting. I'll see you on another great episode.